Hello and welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gangrene. I'm your host Bubbs. Today we have a very special guest here on the show today, Jake Asman. Really huge thanks for coming out. Taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're doing a lot these days. Thanks for coming on. How's it going?
Doing well, Bubbs. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Love the setup you have. Very cool.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, really excited to have you on. We're gonna get into a lot today. Get into obviously the Jets and stuff. Talk. Wild kind of 3 weeks so far. Typical Jets 3 weeks of the season. Never a dull moment with this team. Just kind of wanted to get your thoughts. Then we'll kind of take a deeper dive into each. Kind of the offense, defense, and all that good stuff. What are your thoughts so far? 3 weeks in, 1-2. Obviously, you had the big win against the Browns, the comeback victory. Then you have the two duds week one, and then obviously yesterday. Kind of what are your thoughts so far of what you've seen from the team and what you would like to see the rest of the way?
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. They're lucky to be 1-2 right now.
Yeah.
They really are. Now that you don't apologize for that, you take that win and you run with it. But this team has yet to play a real game where all three units have played well together. Week one, it was the defense playing well for most of that game. The offense and special
Mhm.
teams were horrible. Last week against the Browns, the offense put up 31 points. You had the miracle comeback in the final 2 minutes, but the defense did not play well, and they very easily could have lost that game. And then yesterday, first half, the defense was horrendous, and the offense was bad for
Mhm.
the entire game. So, I'm concerned about this team. I'm concerned about the coaching staff from what we have seen
Yep.
so far. They're lucky to be 1-2, and it's only 3 games, and you certainly rather be 1-2 than 0-3. But this is very easily an 0-3 team right now, if not for a gift from the gods last week against the Browns.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the defense has been, like you mentioned, awful. You had the one good start against Baltimore, gave you some hope, and then you have the bad game against, Cleveland, and then the bad game again yesterday. And it's just frustrating because it seems as if they take like a step in the right direction and they take multiple steps back. They get a win. It was obviously a miracle, but then they always take that step back where that next week they struggle. It's just typical Jets fashion where you get a big win, you're on a high, and then the next week you come out and they just lay a flat dud at home to an 0-2 Bengals team where Burrow got sacked 13 times going into yesterday, led the league by a mile, and the Jets couldn't get any pressure on him. Now Olbrick, from the fan base, and is kind of getting some pressure. What have you seen? What do you think is the big issue right now with the defensive side of the ball, specifically yesterday, not being able to generate any pressure on Joe Burrow?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest issue, right? I think you kind of just answered your question there. This pass rush is the most overrated unit, as far as I'm concerned, in the NFL right now. I'm tired of hearing
Mm-hmm.
about how great the Jets' defensive line is going to be. I mean, we're through 3 games right now, and the defense has just 5 sacks. That ranks sixth worst in the NFL. They're allowing 27 points per game, which is also the sixth worst in the NFL. The sack totals through 3 games, I mean, you have Quinton Williams, who's got 1.5, Quincy's, who's got 1, Sheldon Rankins has
Mm-hmm.
1, Carl Lawson only 0.5, Jacob Martin
Yeah.
0.5, Jermaine Johnson only a half sack. And I think a big issue is the defensive rotations. You're not playing your
Yeah.
best players, and it's concerning right now. I think that's been the biggest issue with this defense. I think the corner play has been really good. Sauce Gardner is impressed. I think DJ Reed has been really good so far, but you're not getting a lot out of safety. And then when you don't have that and you're not getting a pass rush, you have breakdowns in the secondary. And that's been a huge issue through these first 3 games.
Yeah, I totally agree. Not generating enough pressure, and secondary's been good. And I know you probably saw too. The comments from DJ Reed yesterday after the game, I think were pretty. Show his leadership. I think that's pretty good what he said in terms of like kind of trying to instill a little bit of a sense of urgency into the team, because if you lose against Pittsburgh, start out 1-4, 1-5, I mean the season's over. You're already in a hole as it is at 1-2 going on the road. They got to find a way to be better. Kind of back to the defensive line, Carl Lawson, like you mentioned, half a sack, has not been the player that we expected him to be through the first 3 weeks. I honestly thought yesterday could have been his big game, given that, they're a passing offense. We faced two rushing offenses in week 1 and 2. Do you think it's him kind of trying to find his groove again? Do you think it's just kind of where he's at after the torn Achilles? What do you think is wrong and why Carl Lawson's not getting enough pressure so far through the first 3 weeks?
Yeah, I think it could be a combination of a bunch of things. I mean, the torn Achilles is certainly a factor, right? He's coming off a major
Yep.
injury, and he hasn't looked like that dominant player that we were sold a bill of goods that we were supposed to be getting. So I think that's a concern. I also just think he's not playing enough, man. You look at the
Yeah.
defensive snap counts for this game yesterday. I have them pulled up in front of me. Carl Lawson went out there and he only played 45 snaps out of a possible 68. I need
Mm,
to see Carl Lawson on the field a whole heck of a lot more. You look at the snap counts. Quinton Williams, another example, 46 out of only 68. Why does Nathan Shepard need to play 22 snaps in this game yesterday, Bubbs? So
yeah.
I don't know what exactly it is in particular with Lawson. I think it's a combination of several factors, but that's got to get fixed. They got to get production out of him. He's their highest paid defensive lineman. This is the highest paid defensive line unit in the NFL. And through 3 games, they have been absolutely horrendous when you consider the expectations.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, it's definitely, like you mentioned, could be definitely a accumulation of a lot of things. You're just not getting that. We saw like all training camp. You see all these, highlights and all these, joint practices. See all him coming off the edge and being that force just hasn't done that, and it's frustrating. And Jermaine John, you saw Jermaine Johnson. Clemens has been in there, not a ton. You just haven't got much production at all. Kind of to close out the defense line, do you read into Quinton Williams fighting with the coach at all, as something to be concerned about? Or is that just, do you feel, because I feel it's kind of just in the game, heat of the moment. Do you feel it's him kind of disagreeing with the scheme, just being frustrated? What do you feel, Williams, fighting with the coach? What do you
Yeah.
feel about that?
And I think it's clearly him disagreeing with the scheme, which is okay.
Yeah.
Because if you actually go and look what happened after the altercation, the defense played a lot better.
Yeah.
Apparently, Quinton was upset with the 7-man blitz on the Boyd
Yeah.
touchdown and was telling the defensive line coach that trust the 4-man rush would get home. And that was the same drive after you had the JFM roughing the passer penalty on 3rd down.
Jordan
So,
Whitehead.
yeah, like tensions were already high before that moment. I mean, those two guys apparently, have a wonderful relationship. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Quinton Williams played well, I thought, yesterday. So
He's done well, I thought. Yeah.
He's the least of my concerns. So ultimately, I don't think it's that big of a deal. But if you look statistically, the Jets defense played better from that point on. Like the defense, as bad as they were in the first half, they only allowed 7 points on a short field in the second half. They did a good job. I just want them to figure it out from the jump, so they're not always trailing in these games. It's just been abysmal.
Yeah, because when you're trailing, it sets the entire team back. The offense can't get in a groove. You can't get the run game going. That kind of, causes Flacco to throw the ball 52 times, which I'm really annoyed with. 50 plus times throwing the ball is just out of this world crazy. Like you mentioned, I mean, the JFM penalty was terrible. The 2 plays, I look at yesterday that kind of set the tone for the rest of the game was the JFM penalty and then whatever Whitehead was doing on that play, 3rd down to Boyd. It was just not good. What are your thoughts on Whitehead? And we'll kind of shift over to the offense. What are your thoughts on Whitehead so far? He had the blown coverage against Baltimore. He's made a couple nice tackles. Yesterday was terrible. What have you seen so far from Whitehead? Because the safeties, Joyner's really struggled. Thoughts from Whitehead so far. Another free agent has come in, hasn't made much of an impact as like a DJ Reed. But what are your thoughts on Whitehead so far? Obviously, other than the missed tackle.
Yeah, I mean but that's a huge point, right? Like that
Yeah.
that can't happen. Like you're a veteran, you've been in this league a long time, you're on your 2nd contract.
Mm-hmm.
Wrap up. Don't try and deliver the hit stick. You could wrap up and deliver a big hit. Those things are allowed to happen at the same time. He's been disappointing. The safety room in general has been awful. I mean, Marcus Joyner's been terrible. Like it's time to do something different. This scheme is not working right now. They got to try and do something different because whatever they're doing is not getting it done.
Yeah, I totally agree. The safety room, and then you can go back and the cutting of Pinnock was questionable, and all those things. Kind of enter through your mind of what this room could look like if they kind of made the right moves in the offseason. Letting go of Pinnock definitely hurts, and Will Parks yesterday, I think, had like 1 defensive snap I saw. He hasn't done much, so it's just the whole defense as a whole is just it's just not good. They're letting up too many of these soft coverages. It's just not what we want out of Olbrich, and Saleh too. That's alarming. A head coach is a defensive-minded coach, and your defense is the worst aspect of your team. That's a true concern. So defense has been terrible, no doubt about it. You go to the offensive side of the ball, and it's been very odd. Week 1 was terrible. Week 2 really good. Yesterday was not very good. A lot of it's playing from behind. They're not able to get into a rhythm. Kind of overall, what have you felt you've seen from Flacco the 3 weeks? We feel like Wilson will be coming back this week. We'll get into that here in a second. But what have you kind of seen overall from the offense? Kind of been a positive considering how bad the defense has been.
Yeah, and I think the offense has been really bad. So that tells you how
Yeah, it's
bad
been bad. Yeah,
the defense. I mean, Flacco had 2 great minutes against the Browns, and we thank him for it. No one can take that away from him. I'm glad the Jets are 1
yeah,
2, and they very easily could be 0 3. But let's be real.
yeah.
They didn't score a touchdown until garbage time in week 1. And yesterday they couldn't
Hmm.
find the end zone. And
Yep,
they have talent on this team. I understand the offensive line has not played well. I understand they're down to their
yep,
fourth string left tackle. It's not an excuse. There's enough talent on this team. You go back and watch the film, Flacco's missing guys wide open, which is
yep.
incredibly frustrating if you're a fan of this team like we all are. So it's not good enough, man. And I know Zach Wilson's coming back, but he alone cannot fix this. I think the play calling has also been very underwhelming. They target Elijah Moore 10 times yesterday. How many of those targets were on 50-50 go routes where he really didn't have a
Hmm.
chance to go and make a play? I don't like the way they've used him. I don't like the way they have used the running game. I mean, the fact that the Jets
Yeah,
lead the NFL in pass attempts with Joe Flacco speaks volumes about where this team's at. So it's been very, very concerning. The defense has been really bad. The offense, outside of really 2 minutes against the Browns, has been
yeah,
just as bad.
yeah. And the offensive line is, offensive lines were struggling, and Flacco kind of being a statue there. It's just it doesn't mix well. And you mentioned the running game. That's been the most frustrating part. I mean, yesterday, look at the running game. They threw the ball 52 times, ran 20, and Brees Hall had 8 carries. I mean, you go out, draft Brees Hall, you get Michael Carter last year. You have two dynamic running backs, and when these guys are not giving you anything, I mean, Brees Hall yesterday averaged, 0.1% under a five yard per carry. I mean, he's done his job when he's gotten the ball. He hasn't gotten it a lot, like you mentioned. So there's no rhythm at all. You mentioned Elijah Moore. Do you think it's a lot of them were 50-50 balls, especially the one 4th down and 5 that they threw it to him like 20 yards downfield, which I didn't really understand that play at all. You needed 5 yards, they throw it deep. Doesn't make sense. But you think when Wilson comes back, Moore's play will be elevated? What are your thoughts so far? Moore not getting involved as much as we kind of expected.
It's disappointing because I think he's getting open. I think obviously
Yeah,
the talent level is there. I hope with Zach Wilson back, they could start to do a lot of different things offensively. They just can't do it, Flacco. Whether it's rolling out, some more play action. Like Zach's really good when he's on the run. Zach gives an
yeah,
element to this offense that Flacco can't. The protection breaks down. Zach can keep a play alive. You can call
yeah.
design runs with Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson can identify a hole and take off for 10 or 15 yards. Flacco can't do it. So I hope the improvement of athleticism at quarterback will allow this offense to kind of open things up and get a guy like Elijah Moore more involved.
Yeah, I totally agree. He's got to get more involved because you add him with Garrett Wilson. You got and the tight ends, which I'm going to get to now. I mean, you have Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore. You hope that Wilson can elevate them. I mean, Garrett Wilson's been very good. Don't get me wrong; he's been awesome. Yesterday, making that catch, getting hurt in the same play, holding on to it was phenomenal. Been great. Really looking forward to see what he could do the rest of the year. What are your thoughts? The tight end positions. What is most frustrating to me? You go out and get C.J. Uzama. You go out and sign Tyler Conklin. And Conklin, he did lead the team yesterday in receiving yards with 84, but it's a lot of garbage time with Conklin. And it's these short throws to him, late in the third, in the fourth, where he's not, the one touchdown he scored was garbage time against the Ravens. So, and Uzama yesterday finally got a catch. I mean, he got a catch for 5 yards. He didn't get targeted in the Ravens game. Obviously, he was out against Cleveland. It's so frustrating to me. They haven't had a tight end for years. They get two tight ends and are not utilizing enough. What are your thoughts on tight end position?
I completely agree with you, Bubbs. It's been very disappointing. I mean, CJ Uzama, I understand he was hurt, but yesterday, one catch in his return game against
Yeah.
his old team. Are you kidding me? Tyler Conklin, you mentioned it. Yeah, he led the team in catches and yards, but the eye test told you it came in garbage time because it did. Like they're not
Yep.
using him when they're in the flow of the game in rhythm. I think with Zach, that should improve just because we saw that connection a lot over the summer based on the
Yep.
reports. And I think Zach will utilize the tight end on some of those rollout plays that Flacco just can't do because he's a statue. So that certainly should help a little bit. But yeah, I mean, let's call it for what it is. We kept hearing about how great these tight ends were going to be for this offense, and through 3 games, it's been very underwhelming.
Yeah, I totally agree. Um, yeah, you saw Wilson a lot. I mean, even at the green and white scrimmage and at training camp a lot, he used Conklin a ton. I thought Wilson actually used Conklin more than Uzama, a lot more. Just that connection, and then Wilson goes down and all that stuff. So you got to hope that they find a rhythm. Do Dwayne Brown obviously being hurt? Do you see them? Font is out this week. Kind of the offensive line is all over the place with Wilson coming back. Connor McDermott out there who's just terrible. Max Mitchell still kind of he's not great. He's a rookie. He's learning. He's kind of taking everything in right now. Where do you feel the offensive line's at? Do you feel it can get any, better? Is this kind of what the offensive line is going to be this year if Dwayne Brown just doesn't come back and George Font, who didn't really play well yesterday, then went out with the knee? What are your thoughts kind of just on the offensive line as a whole? Really bad. Becton goes down, all that stuff. Kind of where do you see it now, and do you see it getting any better? Or is this kind of what we're working with?
It should get better, you would think, with more
Yep.
playing time and a quarterback that, let's be real, can maybe make the line look a little better by escaping some of these quarterback pressures. So yeah, I don't love this line. I think they're better than what they played, though. I think they
Yeah.
are. There's too much talent on this offensive line, too much invested in this offensive line for it to be this bad. But the Fant knee injury is concerning because obviously he had to leave the game. He comes in, Connor McDermott comes in, he immediately gets lit up, and Trey Henderson beats him like a drum. So it's a real problem right now. I think Max Mitchell, to his credit, has actually played very well at right tackle. So that's been encouraging. AVT, I think, is solid. Laken Tomlinson is a good player. But, I mean, they got to figure out left tackle and make an adjustment there, right? Leave the tight end in the block. Have running backs chip a lot more. How is it Trey Hendrickson seemingly got in the backfield on what felt like basically every play in this game yesterday? So there's got to be adjustments that are made there. This line's not great, but I don't think they're as bad as they played so far. This offensive line was a lot better last year, and there was less talent on the offensive line last year than there was this year.
Yeah, I totally agree. And especially with Wilson coming off of a knee injury, the last thing you want, someone to blow past, McDermott, or even if it's Font who's out there, blow past them, sack Wilson, him get hurt again. That's the last thing you want. And you also don't want, Wilson's more mobile, but you don't want Wilson to be running for his life either. You need to see him, with a clean pocket, step up, deliver good throws. So Wilson's coming back hopefully next week. That's what all the reports are saying. Ian Rappaport, Salah said it obviously prior to week one. Do you feel Wilson kind of just what are your thoughts on Wilson as a whole? Do you believe he is the answer? Do you feel that what he showed last year towards the end of the year, with playing much better football and the Jets kind of as a whole, being in the game against Tampa, playing well against Jacksonville, had the long run, all that good stuff. Do you feel Wilson's the answer? Also, is he kind of the guy to get this, inject some energy into this team, which right now is flat out horrible?
Yeah, look, I think he's better than Joe Flacco, so we'll
Yep.
start there. I think he gives you a better chance to win than Joe Flacco does, so that's already an improvement. Do I think he's the answer? I mean, I don't know. I mean, odds are he's probably not, just because that's the history of the Jets. But like, is he better than Joe Flacco? Yes. Can he help this team win games this year? Yes, he can. Do I know if he's the long-term guy for this team? I mean, we're going to find out. That's why he needs to play, so we could properly evaluate what he is. I mean, he was the second pick in the draft for a reason, and ultimately they need to find out what he is going forward. So I'm glad he's back. I don't think he's going to come in and light it up right away, but I do think if they surround him with better game plans and the players go out there and make plays around him, he should be able to get this offense moving at a much higher level than what we've seen from Flacco through 3 games.
Yeah, I totally agree. He's got it. I mean, because now he's the only answer. Because now, like, if he starts to struggle, you can't bench him and say, "Oh, we're going to Flacco," because Flacco's done nothing in the 3 games. Just a quick question. I mean, I know we're kind of on Wilson now. Were you rooting for? Did you want to see Mike White get out there yesterday at all? Because I wanted to see it. I don't get the point of putting Flacco out there who did nothing all game, and he come out second half. You have the ball. Let Mike White get let Mike White get a little bit of burn. Did you feel that way too?
I did. I tweeted the same thing. I wanted Mike White in this game at halftime. I mean, it was 20-9. You're getting the ball to start the third quarter. I thought it was the perfect opportunity to maybe try and give this team a spark. And they didn't do it. And with the second they didn't do it, and next thing you know, Flacco's fumbling off the sack. And a couple plays later, Jamar Chase is wide open in the end zone to make it 27-9. You knew the game was over right there. So it was like it was just being a Jet fan in a nutshell there. Like, we all could have saw that coming, and of course it happened. So very frustrating. And the loyalty that this coaching staff shows to its veteran players, it's alarming at times. Like JFM with the penalty can't happen. Corey Davis personal foul penalty at the end of the game can't happen. The loyalty to Joe Flacco, who has been bad in pretty much, I mean, let's call it for what it is. Like, the Jets have gone out there and they played 12 quarters of football so far this year, and Flacco was pretty bad in like 11.75 of those quarters. Yet they stuck with him. So it's frustrating, man. Hopefully And you're asking a lot out of Zach Wilson, but hopefully he can come back and stabilize his offense.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned with the Salah is so lucky they're not 0-3 because the whole receipts comments right now, they be tearing the New York media, us Jets fans, we'd be tearing them apart right now. And we are tearing them apart at 1-2, rightfully so. They got to be better, And to kind of go back to Salah, when we hired him, I was expecting him to be that guy that Gaze was not, where he'd hold play, even Bowles, hold players accountable when a mistake that JFM made yesterday. He shouldn't be back out there. And and there were two crucial mistakes, because even the Corey Davis play, albeit we were down by 15 at that point. I mean, that's a difference between what was, I think, a 3rd down and 6 and a 3rd down 21, and it was a 4th down and all that stuff. So the Jets, if they scored that drive, they'd only be down 7. I mean, it was early in the 4th quarter. They were still, technically in the game. If they score, get the 2 point, it's a 7-point game. Those penalties are crucial. You even go back to last week, Marcel Harris with a dumb penalty. And yet he sticks those guys out there. You don't see him on the sidelines, confronting these guys. You don't see him you saw Dable yelling at Daniel Jones for week 1 against the Titans. You haven't seen that as Solid. Do you think that's ever going to happen? Or do you think Salah's going to kind of maybe realize that there's urgency here? It's got to be smarter. Do you ever see him doing that, or is he just kind of sit on it, just stand there and let these things happen and let these guys get away with it?
Kind of feels like that's how he coaches. So I wouldn't expect a drastic change here. I mean, it works if you're winning, but right now you're not winning, so people are going to use that against you. I mean, Salah's got to be who he is, but I'm with you. I think he's sometimes too nice to his own players. I totally agree. The Marcel Harris penalty is a great example. Get in that guy's face. It feels like there's a culture of acceptance. Like there's a lack of accountability when stuff like that happens and the head coach doesn't say anything.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, bench the guy, sit him, let them, kind of marinate their mistake. Let that mistake, linger with them. Don't just send them back out there, because that's why these penalties are keep happening on undisciplined football, and it's costly penalties too. I mean, I know the Marcel Harris penalty was, was stupid, but it wasn't as costly as like a JFM penalty or even Corey Davis yesterday. And it's veteran guys too. It's not like it's young guys making these mistakes. It's veteran guys who the young guys are supposed to look up to, but it's just, it's really poor, really poor. So that will kind of do it here. At least we got our, at least it seems like we got our kicker finally.
That's right. I mean, give credit to Greg Zuerlein, man. I mean, he's been money after, he had the debacle week 1 and we all wanted him gone. But to be fair to him, he's been awesome. Sauce Gardner's been awesome. I thought Garrett Wilson was awesome yesterday. There were some things to like about this team. I think that's what just adds to the frustration, right? It's like you see like the increased talent level here, yet they're 1-2 and they've been non-competitive in 2 out of the 3 games in the 4th quarter. I think that's where the frustration really stems from, because we do see improvement, yet it's not translating, and that is what's really frustrating if you're a fan of this team.
Yeah, it's one of the more talented rosters we've had in a while, and that's kind of when it's on the coaching, and we got this talent, they're not utilizing it. I mean, Elijah Moore's a prime example. Ton of talent. You're not getting much, he's not, they're only targeting him in, these one-on-ones and these 50-50s, and they're not, he's left open, Flacco, some bad throws, all that stuff. So it's always frustrating. You hope they could turn it around. Are you at all optimistic that they come out this week? Maybe a little bit of energy, a little bit more fire. Wilson's going to be out there. Do you believe, Mitch Trubisky? I'd assume it doesn't seem like Tomlin's going to move on from him and go to Pickett just yet. Do you believe if Trubisky's out there, you believe this team can get the win on the road in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I think they have a chance. I mean, they better, go out there and have a chance in the 4th quarter. That's like the minimum expectation, right? So I'm totally with you. I do think Zach coming back will help this offense. I don't think they could be much worse. I mean, I just saw some stats about Joe Flacco here that I could read to you. This is from Pro Football Focus. Flacco had 6 turnover-worthy plays yesterday. That was the most by any quarterback in a game this year. His 27.1 overall grade was the worst any starting quarterback had this season. So Zach Wilson, by default, is better than Joe Flacco. I think that alone should help. Will they be able to fix the defensive issues? That's a major question I think we all have going into this one.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot let Mitch Trubisky smoke your defense. If Mitch Trubisky goes out there next week and throws 310 yards, Old Brick better not be on that plane going back to Florham Park. Better not be. So we'll see. I mean, and like you said with the turnovers, I mean, I was watching it popped up on my Twitter feed, watching Zach Taylor yesterday in the post-game locker room speech. and he was just giving guys game balls, and he was like, this guy got a turnover, this guy forced a fumble, this guy did this. I'm like, yep, that was the game for the Jets offense. That was the 60 minutes of football that we had to sit through and endure yesterday, and full of just poor football. There are positives, there's talent, just not working right now.
Yeah,
And
no doubt. It's been very frustrating, and the Bengals used the Jets yesterday as a get right game, and that's got to
Yep.
stop. I mean, it's like, when does it stop? It should stop
Yep.
now. You know, they got to. They're lucky they're 1-2. Win on Sunday, get the 2-2, and then the whole vibe around this team will change the way it did after the Browns game. I mean, Jet fans we're dying. We're dying for a win here. Like one win, you saw what it did to the fan base last week. Now you're down in the dumps after one loss. They are 1-2 with a winnable game on Sunday. Find a way to get it done.
Yep. Like you mentioned on your show yesterday, it's a week to week league. We win this week, we all forget about this game, and that's the big thing. So really appreciate you coming on. Just tell everybody where can they find you, what you're doing. I know you YouTube and the radio show and all that good stuff. Just social media. Where can everybody find you?
Yeah, easiest place to find me is YouTube, Jake Asman, Twitter, Jake Asman. And if you're a Jet fan, we talk Jets every day on the YouTube channel, so check it out.
Yep, sounds good. Thank you again so much for coming on. Really, really enjoyed talking with you, and would love to do this again sometime. And hopefully, if we do it again, it's after a win, or when they have a winning record, or Zach Wilson's playing great or something like that. So really appreciate you coming on as always. I hope you all enjoyed it, and thank you all for listening.